Picture this scene with me for a moment. It is Sunday morning and you wake up slowly, still wrapped in the warmth of your blankets, and the very first thing you hear is the soft, rhythmic tapping of raindrops against your window. The sky outside is painted in shades of gray. The air feels heavy and cool, and the entire world beyond your walls seems to have collectively decided to slow down and breathe more quietly. Now here is where things get interesting, because most people in this exact moment will let out a disappointed sigh and think to themselves that the day is already ruined before it even started, that their plans are spoiled, that the weather has betrayed them somehow. But you, and I suspect, if you clicked on this video, you know exactly what I'm about to say. You feel something completely different happening inside your chest. Something loosens, something settles, and a quiet voice somewhere deep in your mind whispers the words you have been waiting to hear all week. Finally, the rain has come. If you have ever felt genuinely happier when clouds roll in, if you have ever caught yourself hoping that the forecast would turn gray, if your friends and family have ever looked at you with confusion when you expressed excitement about a rainy afternoon, then this video was made specifically for you. Because today, we are going to explore the fascinating psychology behind people who prefer rainy days. And I promise you that by the time we reach the end, you will understand yourself and your love for gray skies in ways that might genuinely surprise you. Let us start by addressing what most people assume about those who love the rain, because the assumptions are almost always wrong. Society tends to look at people who prefer overcast weather and immediately jumps to conclusions about sadness and depression and melancholy, as if choosing rain over sunshine must be some kind of symptom that needs treatment. There is this deeply ingrained cultural belief, particularly in Western societies, that sunshine equals happiness and that healthy, well-adjusted people should naturally crave bright skies and warm rays on their skin. But here is the thing that psychological research has been gradually revealing over the past few decades. The relationship between weather and mood is far more complex and individualized than we ever previously understood. And for a significant portion of the population, gray and rainy weather actually correlates with improved mood, enhanced creativity, and deeper feelings of peace and contentment. So what is actually happening in the brains and nervous systems of people who feel drawn to rainy days? And why does this preference exist at all from a psychological standpoint? To understand this properly, we need to talk about something called baseline arousal levels, which is a concept that comes from the field of personality psychology and neuroscience. Every single person has what researchers call a different baseline level of nervous system activation, meaning that some people naturally exist in a state of lower internal stimulation and therefore seek out excitement, novelty, and high-energy environments to feel balanced, while other people have naturally higher baseline arousal and actually need less external stimulation to feel comfortable because their internal world is already quite active. This is closely connected to where someone falls on the introversion-extroversion spectrum, and it helps explain why the same environment can feel completely different to two different people standing in the same room. Now think about what a bright, sunny day actually presents to your nervous system from a purely sensory perspective. The sunlight is intense and demands attention from your visual processing systems. People tend to be more active and social and loud when the weather is nice, so the social demands increase dramatically. There is an unspoken cultural pressure to go outside and do things and make the most of the beautiful day. And the overall energy in your environment ramps up significantly. For people with higher baseline arousal, which often correlates with introversion and high sensitivity, this increase in external stimulation can actually push them past their optimal zone and into a state of overstimulation that feels exhausting rather than energizing. But a rainy day does exactly the opposite, because it naturally dampens all of those stimulation sources at once, and suddenly the world is quieter, softer, less demanding, and more compatible with their neurological needs. This connects beautifully to research on what psychologists call highly sensitive persons, a trait identified and studied extensively by Dr. Elaine Aron starting in the 1990s. Approximately 15 to 20% of the population possesses this trait of high sensory processing sensitivity, which means their nervous systems are wired to process stimuli more deeply and thoroughly than the average person. These individuals tend to notice subtleties that others miss. They often feel overwhelmed by loud or chaotic environments, and they frequently need more downtime to recover from stimulating experiences. For highly sensitive people, rainy days can feel like the world itself has decided to accommodate their needs for once, as if the environment has wrapped itself in a soft blanket and lowered its voice to a whisper. But sensory comfort is only part of the story, because the psychology of rain preference goes much deeper than simply avoiding overstimulation. There is something profoundly interesting happening at the level of creativity and cognitive function when the skies turn gray and the rain begins to fall. Researchers have discovered that ambient sounds with certain qualities, particularly continuous low-frequency sounds with organic variation, can actually enhance creative thinking and improve performance on tasks that require abstract thought and open-ended problem solving. Rain happens to produce exactly this type of sound, a consistent yet varied auditory texture that provides enough stimulation to prevent boredom while remaining gentle enough not to distract from internal thought processes. This is why so many people instinctively turn on rain sounds or thunderstorm recordings when they need to focus or create. And it helps explain why writers, artists, and deep thinkers throughout history have expressed such profound affection for stormy weather. There is also a psychological phenomenon at play that researchers sometimes call the cozy factor, or what the Danish would recognize as an essential component of hygge. That untranslatable concept describing a quality of warmth, intimacy, and contentment that comes from simple pleasures enjoyed in comfortable settings. Rainy weather creates what psychologists might describe as a natural boundary between the inner world and the outer world. A soft but real barrier that gives you permission to retreat inward without guilt or social penalty. When the sun is shining and the weather is perfect, there is an implicit expectation that you should be outside doing something productive or social, and staying inside can trigger feelings of guilt or fear of missing out. But when rain falls from the sky, it grants a kind of psychological permission to stay in, to slow down, to wrap yourself in comfort and simply exist without the pressure to perform or produce or socialize. This permission structure connects to something deeper in human psychology related to our needs for rest and recovery in a world that increasingly refuses to allow for either. Modern life, particularly in achievement-oriented cultures, tends to treat rest as laziness and stillness as wasted potential, creating an environment where many people feel perpetual guilt about taking time to simply be rather than constantly do. Rainy days provide external justification for the rest that your nervous system desperately needs, but your internalized productivity guilt would never normally allow. When you stay inside reading a book while rain patters against the windows, you are not being lazy. You are simply responding appropriately to the weather. And this reframing makes the rest psychologically accessible in a way it normally might not be. Let me take you even deeper into this psychology by exploring the concept of what researchers call aesthetic chills, or frisson, which describes that pleasurable shivering sensation that some people experience in response to certain types of beauty or emotional stimulation. Studies have found that people who are more prone to experiencing aesthetic chills tend to score higher on the personality trait of openness to experience, and they often report stronger emotional responses to music, art, nature, and atmospheric phenomena like storms and rain. There is something about the drama of weather, the way gray clouds transform ordinary landscapes into moody paintings, the way rain creates layers of sound and texture and movement, that triggers deep aesthetic appreciation in certain types of minds. If you feel genuine beauty when you watch rain fall, if storms make you feel more alive rather than less, you are likely someone whose brain is wired to find profound meaning and pleasure in sensory experiences that others might dismiss as merely unpleasant or inconvenient. We should also talk about the fascinating research on weather and introspection, because there appears to be something about overcast and rainy conditions that naturally promotes deeper thinking and self-reflection. One study found that people actually performed better on memory tasks on cloudy days compared to sunny days, possibly because the reduced external stimulation allowed for more internal cognitive resources to be directed toward the task at hand. Other research has suggested that mild negative mood states, which gray weather might gently induce in some people, can actually promote more careful and analytical thinking compared to the more heuristic and superficial processing that tends to accompany very positive moods. This does not mean that people who love rain are sad or that rain makes them sad, but rather that the slightly more reflective state that rainy weather promotes might be genuinely preferred by people whose minds naturally tend toward depth, analysis, and introspection. There is a beautiful concept from Japanese aesthetics called mono no aware, which roughly translates to a bittersweet awareness of the impermanence of things, a gentle sadness connected to the passing nature of beauty and time and life itself. Rain embodies this aesthetic perhaps more perfectly than any other weather phenomenon, because it is inherently temporary. It transforms the world while it lasts, and it carries with it a quality of wistfulness that speaks to something deep in the human soul. People who are drawn to rainy days often have a natural affinity for this type of melancholic beauty, not because they are depressed or pessimistic, but because they have the emotional depth and sensitivity to appreciate the full range of human experience, rather than constantly chasing only the brightest and loudest forms of happiness. I want to address something important here, which is that preferring rainy weather is not the same thing as seasonal affective disorder or clinical depression, even though these things are sometimes confused in popular understanding. While some people do experience genuine mood disorders connected to lack of sunlight, the research shows that responses to weather are highly individual, and that some people legitimately thrive psychologically in conditions that others find draining. Your preference for gray skies might simply reflect your unique neurological makeup, your personality traits, your aesthetic sensibilities, and your genuine psychological needs, none of which are pathological or require any kind of treatment. The fact that you feel better when it rains is not a problem to be solved. It is information about who you are and what conditions help you function at your best. Consider for a moment the evolutionary perspective on why some humans might have developed a preference for seeking shelter and reducing activity during rainy weather. Throughout most of human history, rain meant that certain types of work and travel became more difficult or dangerous, and the individuals who felt content to stay in their shelters, to rest and recover and engage in quieter activities during storms, might have actually had survival advantages in certain contexts. The variation we see in weather preferences across the human population might reflect this evolutionary diversity, with some individuals optimized for high activity during fair weather, and others adapted to thrive during the quieter periods that storms demand. As we come toward the end of this exploration, I want to offer you a reframe that might feel both validating and liberating. Your love of rainy days is not a flaw or a quirk that sets you apart from normal people. It is an expression of a particular kind of nervous system, a particular way of processing the world, and a particular set of psychological needs that are completely valid and actually quite common once you start looking for others who share them. The people who prefer rain tend to be introspective and creative, sensitive and thoughtful, drawn to depth over surfaces and meaning over mere stimulation. These are not small things, and the weather that nurtures these qualities in you is not the wrong weather. It is your weather. So the next time the forecast calls for gray skies and precipitation, and you feel that familiar warmth spreading through your chest while everyone around you complains, know that you are experiencing something real and something good. Your brain is recognizing the conditions it needs to thrive. Your nervous system is anticipating the relief of reduced stimulation. Your creative mind is preparing for the fertile conditions that rain provides. And your soul is responding to a type of beauty that not everyone can see, but that is no less real for being less obvious. If this exploration resonated with something true in your experience, I would genuinely love to hear about your relationship with rainy weather in the comments below. Tell me what rain means to you. Share the memories and feelings it evokes, and let us build a community of people who understand that sometimes the most beautiful days are the ones painted in gray. If you are new here and you want more deep dives into the psychology of everyday human experiences, consider subscribing because there is so much more to explore together. And the next time the rain comes, I hope you let yourself fully enjoy it, knowing that your love for it makes perfect sense.